So tell me about, let's talk a little bit about the hanging out. Tell me about not going home and why would Sammy Davis go to LA, check into a hotel, and go back to Vegas? I mean, why didn't they like to go home? Was
Well,
it all the adulation, or just you all had such a great time together?
you know what? There was a camaraderie after, even if they worked strip joints. Camaraderie. There were certain restaurants we would all congregate. A place in Chicago would be the Corner House. Either that or the hotel. They all stayed at the same hotel. And in Chicago, well, it doesn't make a difference. But there were always the Hanson's drugstore for the comics in New York, Lindy's. They would all, congregate and meet in these same places. They'd tell jokes. They would do this. They would tell what they loved. They would lie to each other. They would tell them how good they were doing. And that was the joy of show business. It wasn't only on the stage. The stage, I think, was secondary. Stage was maybe 1 out of 10 guys was really working, and the other 9 guys were lying.
You really think that, in other words, you really think that that there were more good times and more jokes off stage than on? Do you think that's a fair statement?
I don't know whether it's a fair statement. Now you can make it a bad
But
statement.
I mean, is it accurate, or do you think it's baloney?
No, I think that the performers had more fun off stage. Sure, getting together with each other. In some ways, it's the same today with these kids working comedy clubs. They've got like a.
And there are always guys, there's this guy, Joey Lester. He's in every backstage stuff I've ever seen. It's like he must have loved to hang out.
Who's
No, not Buddy Lester.
Oh, Buddy.
I kept asking, who's that? No, that's Buddy. That's
Buddy Lester was a very, very good comic.
And he's always around in all this old footage.
Yeah, but Buddy Lester worked with Sinatra. I mean, they did movies with Sinatra.
That's right, he did movies with Jerry.
And Jerry Lester was a top comic.
Right,
He was Broadway open house.
that's right. The first Tonight Show.
Yes. I think that just the fun of show business was that. It was the hanging out.
Right. And hanging out in Vegas was special, right? Because you could be away from your families.
It was hanging out in Vegas was like the same as hanging out at Hanson's and the other places, except that now you met at what was the room at the Garden Room at the Sands, or the coffee shop at the Riviera. But mostly everybody went to the Sands because they had the most prominent performers and most biggest stars.
But they also had gambling. Like Shirley MacLaine said, will you be on the train going to Vegas and you could just feel that it was going to be kind of like a sinful time. That's what she told me.
Was that in this life or her last life? I don't know which. Yeah, that other life.
But don't you think that was also the great seduction of Vegas? The gambling, the showgirl.
The drinking. You see, drinking today would not be tolerated the way it was with the performers getting drunk and everything else. Today, the bosses, the corporations are just. He did what? He threw up on the table? Just tell him he's out. Tell him he's out. Yeah, that's right. What? Girl singer? Yes, get a girl singer. There was an aura at that time that which I didn't live in the 20s, the roaring 20s, but I mean, we'll never see that again. We'll never see this Vegas in the 60s and 50s again. It'll never be.
And so, like, when Joey Lewis would take the bottle on the stage and say post time, and then later Sinatra and the Rat Pack, Sinatra would take his bottle of scotch up. And
No, Joey Lewis never took a bottle on the stage. Joey Lewis would hand him a drink.
Okay.
But I never saw Joey Lewis take a bottle on the stage.
But so that wouldn't be tolerated now?
No, because you don't.
Politically incorrect, right?
Yeah, whatever that means. I'm still trying to figure out what politically incorrect and correct means. What does that mean exactly? Could you explain it to me? So, because I'm so ignorant of that. I mean, if something is right, that's correct, and if something is wrong, that's politically incorrect, right? Okay. They will not allow. No, they would not allow you to take drinks up on the stage and everything else. There may be an individual that performs and then gets a drink off the stage, but if you get drunk today when these big corporations, you're out. I mean, Sinatra could never bring the Rat Pack on, do what they did in those days. Roll out the whiskey and the booze and them drinking? No way.
But that was part of the act, that was part of, that's what
Part-
everybody loved, they loved to watch.
But we don't have those kind of people that love that anymore. The kind of people are now walking around Las Vegas with the drinks in their hand, on with the little shorts and the Bermudas and I cannot understand yet in my life how they allow people walking on the street in Vegas with drinks and beer in their hand. I mean, first it cheapens your city, second of all, it's against the law, and they allow it. But that's the kind of, I'm not putting everybody that comes down to Vegas, and not because I sold all my property there, and I'm out of there completely. But I just do not feel it was ever the same. We had, at one period, we had what we call nightclub people. There was no such thing as nightclubs anymore, and those were rounder type of people. They loved to gamble, and they loved the good food, they knew the best restaurants. Today, I don't think whether people know the best restaurants or not.
And they came dressed, they were always dressed.
Well, when I first went into Vegas in the early 50s, they were not dressed. At night, they would get dressed up, but they were in cowboy outfits and everything else, you know. But it changed, and then later on, when the Eastern faction took over, they were very well dressed. They would wear furs when it was 120, and the guy said, "You're going to gamble?" "No, I'm going to stand there and sweat."
Let me ask you one quick
You can
thing.
ask me a lot of questions. We've been here for 6.5 hours.
Is it true that, one guy told me that the guys that ran the clubs in Vegas, that they had an agenda with the performers, especially with the big money makers, that eventually everybody got in the hole to them gambling. That they knew it might take time, but they'd eventually, even though they'd say, you know, to Sammy, look, yeah, here's some money, go into the casino and play because it's good for business. But that they knew that performers were vulnerable.
Not all of them, but I mean, certain performers wouldn't gamble. I think that near the end, those same guys that gave us the money and saw us gambling, allowed us to drink and gamble, didn't want us to. They saw it was wrong. It didn't correct itself for many, many years. Ted Fiorito, who you mentioned earlier, was paying off to the El Rancho Vegas from his ASCAP money. He never saw a check from the ASCAP. It would alter to the El Rancho Vegas because he had lost that much money and he had to stay there. And they buried a performer, yes. And they thought that was the right thing to do.
And so how would they work it out? Would the guy have to go back and work for nothing?
The guy would go back and pay it off. If a guy owed $50,000, they'd take out $10,000 one time or $5,000 one time. Then you come back, they take another $5,000, you know. But near the end, I can honestly say the same guys that allowed us to do that, and did it to me, did it to Sammy, did it to Frank, didn't want it. They all of a sudden said, no more, that's it. You're cut off.
Jerry Lewis told me that he got in, they went into Vegas in the very beginning when he said there were dirt roads. And he got involved and he got gambling and he lost everything. He lost everything he and Dean were gonna make and more. And he went into somebody, and I can't remember who it was. I think he might have told me in the interview, Bugsy Siegel, but whoever it was, he went into the club owner. And he said, you know, I've lost all of this money and I can't pay you. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, well, you know, you're a businessman. Why are you letting a kid like me who knows nothing lose $50,000 when you know I don't have it? How can you be a good businessman? You know, he talked it down to like whatever it was, 10 grand or something. But he told me that it was just so seductive that you could walk through, but then one night you didn't walk through and that would be it. You'd be there, you know, you'd be there and then you'd be there until the following day. And he said they loved, like they would give you a certain amount of money because they loved the guys to go from the stage
Oh, yeah.
out to the casino.
They loved that. Dean used to deal. They loved it.
But
They-
Dean
they-
could deal. Dean knew cards.
Yeah, but I mean, and Frank dealt, they loved that because it was contact with the public. Everything was for their customers at that time. Make the customer happy. And today, it's just, you know, they knew the people that came in. Here come the Schwartzes. The Schwartzes got the East Room facing the sun against the West Room, which is the Japanese people. So they knew all of their, today they don't know anybody, you know.
Right, it's just mass people wandering
Mass.
through.
Today you
Home
walk in, they got a
slot
little
machine.
Japanese girl dealing cards. So you know, touch a card. No touch, don't touch a card. I mean, this is, you gotta play now, you go and blow the cards up to see if you got 21. I mean, there's no joy in this. And people, idiots, still go and they gamble, and they just run and gamble, and I can hardly wait to get there. But I just don't believe it anymore. These people, the boats, the ships, the rivers, the thing, how much gambling do people want? When is the government gonna come down and say, that's enough, you know?
Right.
I
Yeah,
just,
it's become very mundane, you know, in Connecticut.
mundane is a
was in-
great word.
uh,
I like that word.
In Connecticut, they say, you know, all the housewives don't buy antiques anymore because they take their money and they
To
go
the
and
Indian
gamble with the
reservation.
Indians and play the slot machines. You know, because they've got the Indian reservation.
Somebody wins 15 million, you hear in the office, "Hiya, Chana, hey, jaya, kana, chete."
Exactly.
The,
exactly. Well, I think we're great. I think that's wonderful. Unless there's a
No,
closing
no.
joke you'd like to give.
Closing joke? No. Yes, the joke about Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see.
But you gotta put your glasses on.
Las Vegas, you want a closing joke? You know, so many people got very, very wealthy in Las Vegas, and not because of the gambling. The most important thing, and it was right there, we walked on it every day, was the earth. The sod, because millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars were made with this buying of property and stuff. And I was in that town for 30-some years, and I used to call my business manager, and I said, George, I says, you know, let's buy some property in Vegas. He said, for what? It'll be a ghost town. So I used to call him every day, more ghosts are moving in, George, you know? And I really, that's not really a joke, it's the truth, but I really used to get my fellow performers and say, let's make a pool. $100 a week, $200 a week. And nobody would get together. They wouldn't like to have one individual handle that. And it's a crime because we let it go by us. People that work there that should have been in on it, making millions and millions and millions of dollars, and we didn't. And it really broke my heart, because I think about that. And I think about all those buildings going up. And I think of New York, and Circus, and I'm broke. And I just want to tell you something, Carol, and thank you for coming to my house. And I was so glad I was in show business, and I'm so glad I knew Frank and Dean. And thanks a million. Goodbye. Hey, you bet!
Fantastic. Chucky, you're the greatest. You are the greatest.
Now cut it.
Wow. It was awesome.
Give you everything. So
Okay.